An abandoned truck at the airport, a foul stench in the air, and 4 dismembered bodies hidden inside containers that was only the beginning of a chilling hunt for a ruthless predator who manipulated, deceived, and destroyed with terrifying precision, plunging a small town into fear and chaos. Viewer discretion is advised. This story is not for the faint of heart. It began with a dead dog. On a quiet Sunday afternoon in Grants, New Mexico, a landlord entered a recently vacated rental home expecting to clean up after an eviction. What they found instead would unlock one of the most disturbing criminal cases the town had ever seen. Inside the house, the landlord discovered the tortured remains of a dog, its body bearing the unmistakable signs of deliberate sadistic violence. At first, it was treated as an animal cruelty case, but even that was chilling enough. The methodical nature of the torture, the eerie silence of the house, and the darkness that seemed to linger in the air told investigators this wasn't just about a dog. It was a warning sign, a doorway into something far more sinister. Psychologists and criminal profilers have long warned of the link between animal cruelty and deeper psychological disturbances. When someone is capable of such deliberate harm to a defenseless creature, it often reveals a dangerous pathology, a lack of empathy, a desire for control, and a potential for escalation. And escalate it did. The home had recently belonged to Sean and Jennifer Lannon, a couple who had lived quietly in the small town until their eviction. But the brutal death of the dog quickly drew police attention toward them. And when law enforcement began digging deeper, they uncovered more than just a case of animal abuse. They found a trail of disappearances, people who had seemingly vanished without explanation, people connected in some way to the Lannons. Grants wasn't a big town. It was the kind of place where everyone knew someone, where rumors traveled faster than the news. That sense of close-knit community became both a blessing and a curse in the investigation. Word spread quickly. Families with missing loved ones started contacting the authorities. One of the first to come forward was the family of Matthew Miller, who hadn't been heard from in weeks. It wasn't like him to disappear. And the last place he was known to be with the Lannons. Soon a man named Josh Hall approached investigators. He wasn't a witness in the traditional sense. He hadn't seen the crime take place. But in a town like Grants, what you hear is often just as telling. Josh had heard things, dark whispers about Sean Lannon, strange behavior, missing people, and stories that chilled him to the bone. He passed along everything he knew. This wasn't just gossip. The pieces began to connect. The tortured animal, the missing persons, the eerie rumors surrounding Sean, they formed a puzzle that demanded answers. Police obtained warrants and began searching properties, tracing phone records, and interviewing anyone who had crossed paths with the Lannons. What they discovered in the coming days would send shockwaves through the quiet community. Behind the faded walls of that rental home had once lived something far darker than anyone imagined. The house had become a staging ground, a place where darkness brewed, where violent fantasies were lived out, and where secrets had been buried under layers of silence. In the days that followed, the investigation would grow. More names would surface, more families would call, more horrors would be uncovered, and the name Sean Lannon would become synonymous not just with murder, but with the kind of cold-blooded violence that leaves a permanent scar on a community. The discovery of that dog was no coincidence. It was the first piece in a chilling chain reaction, one that peeled back the curtain on a quiet town, exposing the horror that had been hiding in plain sight. As the truth began to emerge, it became clear this wasn't just the story of a killer. It was the unraveling of a nightmare that no one had seen coming. The horror wasn't over. It was just beginning. While the gruesome discovery of the tortured dog had begun to stir questions in Grants, New Mexico, another case was quietly unfolding, one that would take that initial dread and push it into darker, more terrifying territory. Detective Robert Turney had seen his share of disturbing cases, but there was something about this one that unsettled him from the start. A missing persons report had landed on his desk involving 19-year-old Matthew Miller. Matthew wasn't a stranger to trouble. He had a history of substance abuse, and like many young men battling demons, he floated from friend group to friend group looking for a place to belong. But this time something felt off. Matthew hadn't contacted his family in almost a week. For a young man with a chaotic life, silence wasn't totally unheard of. But his grandmother, the one person he always kept in touch with, had a gut feeling something was terribly wrong. She insisted that Matthew had never gone this long without a word. Her worry turned into panic, and soon it turned into a full investigation. Detective Turney started by tracing Matthew's last known connections. It wasn't long before three names surfaced: Justin Maleone Quezada and Jennifer Lannon. Jennifer, the same woman linked to the home where the dead dog was found. That detail alone set off alarms. From there, things spiraled. According to the family, Matthew had last been seen getting into a vehicle with a group of people, Jennifer among them. This was more than a casual hangout. It was the last confirmed sighting of a young man who would soon vanish into the shadows. Days into the investigation, police made a discovery that deepened the mystery. Matthew's vehicle, a Chevy Colorado, was found abandoned near the home of Justin and Leone. The truck was parked at an awkward angle as if it had been dumped in a hurry. But it was what they found inside that made the hairs on Detective Turney's neck stand up. Inside the vehicle were several rubber gloves, a shovel, and multiple broken cell phones. It didn't take a seasoned detective to realize this wasn't just a case of someone walking away from their life. These items suggested preparation, cleanup, and concealment, the kind of tools someone might use if they were trying to make someone disappear. The vehicle alone was troubling. But soon surveillance footage added another layer of dread. Security cameras positioned near Justin and Leone's home showed Matthew's truck pulling up on January 26th, just days before he was officially reported missing. There was no footage of Matthew leaving, no footage of him walking away, getting picked up, or returning to his truck. Reading this part sent chills down my spine. The truck, something that should have just been a clue, suddenly felt like a symbol of dread and mystery. But when the surveillance footage came into play, it was like a cold hand gripped my chest. Seeing Matthew's truck pull up to Justin and Leone's house only for him to vanish without a trace was haunting. No footage of him leaving, no sign of life after that moment. That silence, that absence in the video was what terrified me most. It wasn't just suspicion anymore, it was a gut-deep fear that something terrible had already happened right there unseen. Just one arrival, then silence. This footage, coupled with the abandoned vehicle and disturbing contents, painted a chilling picture. Matthew hadn't simply run off. Something had happened, and whatever it was, it began or ended at the doorstep of Justin and Leone. What disturbed investigators further was how quickly the people involved began to scatter. Justin and Leone became difficult to reach. Jennifer Lannon, already on law enforcement's radar from the prior case, was nowhere to be found. The timing was too precise to be coincidence. And as the investigation into the animal cruelty case overlapped with the growing missing persons reports, connections began to emerge that none of the detectives could ignore. Friends of Matthew described him as troubled, yes, but not suicidal. Not someone who would just vanish without a trace. The people he had been with, especially Jennifer, seemed to move in a dark social circle, one laced with drug secrets and violent undertones. There were whispers that Matthew had been asking questions, that he had seen something he shouldn't have, that he wanted out. Was that why he was targeted? The more police dug, the more the case took on a sinister shape. This wasn't an isolated incident. The abandoned truck, the surveillance footage, the names that kept repeating, they were all threads leading to something bigger, something colder. In a town like Grant's, rumors spread fast, but in this case, the rumors were laced with truth. Families began to fear the worst. Investigators began to suspect they weren't just looking for a missing teen. They were standing on the edge of something far more horrifying, the beginning of a serial case. And through it all, one name kept coming back like a ghost that refused to vanish: Jennifer Lannon. The same woman last seen with Matthew. The same name tied to the tortured animal. The same thread that led deeper and deeper into a nightmare. What began as a routine missing persons case had transformed into the next chapter of a disturbing mystery. And the shadows were only beginning to lift. The deeper Detective Turney looked, the more twisted the picture became. What began as a single missing persons case soon began unraveling into something far more chilling. Matthew Miller's disappearance had already raised serious concerns. But now, two more names surfaced: Justin Ma and Jennifer Lannon. All three individuals knew each other. All three shared ties to drug use, unstable living situations, and turbulent personal relationships. It was no longer just a mystery. It was a web. Detective Turney turned his attention to Leone Quezada, Justin's girlfriend and one of the last people known to have seen both Matthew and Justin. During her interview, Leonie claimed she hadn't seen Matthew in nearly a year. She insisted she had no idea what happened to him, but her story didn't hold up for long. Surveillance footage told a different story. Just days before Matthew disappeared, his truck had been seen near Leonie and Justin's residence. He had clearly been there, and he hadn't left. The contradiction between Leonie's statement and the video footage raised red flags. What was she hiding? Was it fear, or was it something far more sinister? Then came another revelation. Leonie admitted that Justin had vanished too on January 17th. He had left, she said, with a woman named Jennifer, their destination, Arizona. At first it seemed like a dead end. People disappear all the time, especially in the chaotic circles these individuals run in. But something about the name Jennifer Lannon stopped Turney in his tracks. Jennifer Lannon. The same Jennifer tied to Matthew Miller. The same Jennifer seen in surveillance footage. The same Jennifer connected to the tortured dog. And most disturbingly, the same Jennifer whose name had been used by Sean Lannon to report a missing person. Jennifer wasn't just a witness. She wasn't just another name in the file. She was missing. Sean Lannon, her ex-husband, had told authorities that he hadn't seen Jennifer since mid-January, that she had vanished after an argument, that she had been using again, running with the wrong crowd. His statement seemed straightforward at first, but when mapped against what Turney was uncovering, it transformed into something far more alarming. Jennifer Lannon was one of the last people seen with both Matthew and Justin. She was linked to the abandoned truck, to the gloves, the shovel, the house on Kingman Avenue, and now she herself had vanished. And Kingman Avenue wasn't just a random location. It was the house, the place where the tortured dog had been discovered. The property tied directly to Jennifer and Sean Lannon, the epicenter of whatever darkness had begun to unfold. Everything led back there. Suddenly, 3 missing persons were no longer isolated tragedies. They were chapters in the same story. A story soaked in deception, riddled with contradictions, and haunted by a quiet house where something evil had clearly taken place. Leonie's shifting story only added fuel to the fire. If she had lied about seeing Matthew, what else had she hidden? Did she know more about Justin's disappearance than she admitted? Her claim that they left for Arizona was unverified, and her emotional distance during the interview left investigators uneasy. Every path led back to Jennifer Lannon, but now even she had gone silent. Detective Turney began to piece together a pattern, a sickening thread that tied every disappearance to one central figure. Jennifer may have been a victim, or she may have been something worse, a willing participant in something far darker than anyone first imagined. Either way, she was no longer just a name in a file. She was the key. And with every new lead, the case twisted into something more monstrous. These weren't just missing people. They were vanishing into a void that kept growing. A void rooted in one address, 817 Kingman Avenue. When I read that, I felt a surge of unease crawl up my spine. Every new lead wasn't bringing clarity. It was dragging the whole story deeper into something dark and grotesque. These weren't just disappearances anymore. It felt like people were being swallowed whole by some ancient force. And the fact that it all traced back to one address, 817 Kingman Avenue, made it even more chilling. That number didn't just sound like a location anymore. The case had been building like a storm. But what investigators saw next was the lightning strike that illuminated everything. The breakthrough came not from a witness or a confession, but from an unexpected source. A neighbor's home surveillance camera positioned just a few houses down from 817 Kingman Avenue, the place now soaked in suspicion. Detectives had scoured the area, desperate for any visual confirmation of the movements surrounding the disappearances. And then they found it. The footage from January 26th would change everything. It showed 19-year-old Matthew Miller arriving at Sean and Jennifer Lannon's home. He walked up the driveway. He entered the house. And then, nothing. Hours passed, days passed, but not once did the camera record Matthew leaving. Instead, later that same day, it caught something else. Sean Lannon behind the wheel of Matthew's distinctive Chevy Colorado truck. He drove away, alone. When he returned, still alone. This wasn't speculation. It wasn't hearsay. It was cold, time-stamped visual evidence. It raised a haunting question that now screamed for an answer. What happened to Matthew inside that house? Just 2 days later, on January 28th, the same surveillance camera captured another disturbing scene. A figure resembling Sean was seen loading household items, boxes, bags, what looked like furniture pieces into a red Dodge Dakota. The loading was deliberate, calm, purposeful. Then the truck pulled away into the night. To Detective Turney, it was more than just a moving day. It looked like someone trying to cover their tracks. At this point, Sean Lannon went from person of interest to prime suspect. The problem? He was getting harder and harder to reach. Each time Turney attempted contact, Sean gave evasive answers or failed to show up entirely. He was dodging law enforcement, and his reluctance to cooperate painted a picture far more damning than any witness statement ever could. The puzzle pieces were falling into place, but the image they revealed was horrifying. One young man enters a house and never exits. His vehicle is driven away by someone else. That same man is later seen hauling belongings away, and now multiple people tied to this same address are missing. The house at 817 Kingman Avenue was no longer just a place of interest. It had become the epicenter of something deeply disturbing. A place where lives seemed to vanish, where silence hung too thick, and where the man who once lived inside was quickly becoming the central figure in a growing nightmare. Detective Turney knew he had to act fast. With each passing day, the possibility of uncovering the truth slipped further away. Sean's behavior was erratic. His stories didn't line up. He avoided every opportunity to clarify what happened to Matthew, to Justin, to Jennifer. And every unanswered question only deepened the sense that something unspeakable had taken place behind those walls. Just when investigators thought they had uncovered every dark corner of the case, a new voice emerged from the shadows: Josh Hall. Josh was an acquaintance of Matthew Miller, a familiar face around town and someone who had been on the periphery of the storm. But when he reached out to police, what he revealed added a new layer of fear to an already terrifying investigation. According to Josh, something strange had happened involving Sean Lannon shortly after Matthew's disappearance. Josh told detectives that Sean had visited the home of a woman named Kelly Dotto. He hadn't come just to talk. He brought a bag. Not just any bag, one that reportedly contained a firearm and what looked like identification belonging to Jennifer Lannon, his missing ex-wife. Josh claimed that Sean stashed the bag in the ceiling of Kelly's house, hiding it away like a dark secret sealed in plaster and insulation. The implication was chilling. Why would someone hide a gun in someone else's documents unless they were trying to bury the truth? But the story didn't end there. After Sean left, Kelly reportedly discovered the hidden bag. Instead of calling authorities, she handed the weapon over to a man named Danny Lamos, known around town by his nickname Dog. Then Danny disappeared. Detectives were stunned. This revelation not only placed Sean in possession of a weapon and his missing ex-wife's ID, but it also hinted at a network of people either helping him or at the very least staying quiet while he moved in the shadows. What followed next was just as telling. Sean returned to Kelly's home and found the stash gone. His reaction, explosive. In a burst of rage, he shattered his own cell phone, an action that investigators couldn't ignore. To them, it was clear Sean wasn't just upset. He was afraid, not just of what had gone missing, but of what might now be uncovered. The destruction of his phone was no coincidence. It was a panic in motion. From that moment, Sean Lannon was no longer just a suspect. He was a man unraveling. Detectives moved quickly to question both Kelly and Danny. Kelly, however, grew increasingly uncooperative. She refused to come to the police station, declined to give a formal statement, and instead invoked her right to legal counsel. Her sudden silence only fueled more suspicion. Was she protecting herself? Or was she protecting Sean? Danny, on the other hand, had vanished. Efforts to locate him turned up nothing. For a man known for his nickname and street presence, his sudden disappearance was no small event. And given the rumors swirling in Grants, his absence only deepened the sense that something dangerous was at play. Police secured a search warrant for Kelly's home, hoping to find the hidden bag or any trace of evidence that might confirm Josh Hall's claims. But when they combed through the property, they came up empty-handed. No gun, no documents, no physical link to Jennifer, Sean, or anything criminal. Yet the lack of physical evidence didn't erase what had been said. Josh's statement, the suspicious behavior, the missing weapon, they were all puzzle pieces that added weight to the growing theory that Sean Lannon was not only involved in the disappearances but was actively working to erase every trace of them. Even more alarming was the implication that others might be helping him do it. Every corner of this case reeked of secrecy and fear. People were talking in whispers, witnesses were vanishing, stories were changing, and behind it all, Sean moved like a shadow, always one step ahead, always leaving just enough room for doubt. But as Detective Turney and his team closed in, the time for shadows was quickly running out. The truth was coming, and someone was going to break. All signs pointed to one place, 817 Kingman Avenue. Detective Robert Turney knew this address was more than just a location. It was a possible crime scene, the last known connection between several missing individuals. With mounting evidence and growing suspicion around Sean Lannon, Turney secured a search warrant, hoping to finally uncover the truth hidden behind the walls of that unassuming home. But what they found inside chilled investigators in a different way. The house had been gutted. When police entered the property, they were met with a disturbing sight. All the carpeting had been ripped out. Drywall had been stripped from the walls. Paint was fresh in some rooms, covering areas that may once have held stain splatter or something far worse. It was clear someone had gone to great lengths to erase the past, to clean not just dirt, but evidence. Whatever had happened inside that house had been scrubbed from existence. No blood, no fingerprints, no trace of the missing. The silence inside 817 Kingman Avenue was deafening, not because it lacked life, but because it lacked answers. Detectives scoured every inch, lifting floorboards, testing suspicious stains, combing through debris, but the home had been expertly cleared, remodeled just enough to render forensic tools useless. It was a calculated move, a step ahead, and it hit investigators like a punch to the chest. This had been their best shot at physical proof, a chance to confirm suspicions and bring the truth to light. Instead, they were left with hollow rooms and darker questions. What had they missed? Who had helped clean the scene, and how many secrets had been buried right beneath their feet? The house held no answers now, just echoes, and the hunt had to continue elsewhere. March 5th began like any other day at Albuquerque's Sunport Airport, but by afternoon, a red Ford Ranger left abandoned in the parking structure became the center of a nightmare. The vehicle had been sitting for days. Airport security had received complaints about a foul, sickening odor leaking from the truck bed. At first, it was thought to be spoiled food or forgotten waste, but when authorities arrived and opened the back, what they uncovered would scar the department and the town for years. Inside the bed of the truck were 4 large plastic storage bins. What lay inside them would haunt even the most seasoned investigators. 4 bodies, 4 lives, brutally ended, dismembered, and stuffed into makeshift containers as if they were nothing more than garbage. The victims were quickly identified: Jennifer Lannon Justin, Matthew Miller, and Randall Apostolon, the registered owner of the truck. That line hit me like a punch to the gut. 4 bodies, 4 human beings, each with a story, a voice, a heartbeat, reduced to something so horrifyingly cruel. The image of them being dismembered and discarded like trash is almost unbearable to picture. It's not just violence, it's dehumanization at its purest and most chilling form. And knowing their names, Jennifer Justin, Matthew Randall, makes it all the more real. They're no longer faceless victims. They're people who were stolen from the world in a way that defies comprehension. It's the kind of revelation that makes your blood run cold and your faith in humanity falter. Jennifer and Justin had both been shot in the head. Matthew had been bludgeoned with blunt force trauma, his skull crushed, and Randall, his cause of death was even more gruesome. He had been murdered with a hammer. It was the confirmation of every fear, every suspicion, every breadcrumb investigators had followed over the past month. But the horror didn't end with the bodies. Inside the truck were chilling instruments of death, multiple serrated knives, a handheld saw, and industrial-grade gloves still stained with dried blood. These weren't tools of chance. They were tools of intention, precision, calculation. Whoever had done this hadn't just been killed. They had planned, they had butchered, they had tried to erase it, but they failed. Security footage from airport cameras provided the final damning piece of the puzzle. On March 3rd, just 2 days before the discovery, a man was seen driving the very same red Ford Ranger into the parking structure. He parked calmly. No rush, no panic. Then he exited the vehicle and walked away, never looking back. That man was Sean Lannon. Now there was no denying it. He had driven the truck to the airport. He had left it there with 4 bodies inside. He had tried to make them vanish beneath layers of plastic steel and silence, but even the thickest silence can be shattered by the truth. Detectives now had what they needed: the physical evidence, the surveillance, the identities, the method, the madness. Now, there were only 2 questions left. Why had he done it, and who else, if anyone, had helped him carry it out? The discovery at Sunport was the turning point, and the hunt for Sean Lannon would now ignite with relentless force. By March 10th, the man behind the horror had nowhere left to run. Sean Lannon was apprehended in St. Louis, Missouri, ending a multi-state manhunt that had left communities in fear and investigators scrambling for answers. He was quickly extradited back to New Jersey to face a growing mountain of charges, but no one expected what would happen next. During a tense interrogation led by Detective Robert Turney, the same man who had followed the case from its first grim clue, Sean didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't deny. He confessed, and he did it with a calm so unnatural it sent chills down the spine of everyone in the room. Piece by piece, Sean Lannon laid out his crimes in shocking detail, revealing not only the how, but the why. "It began," he said, with Jennifer Lannon, his ex-wife, the mother of his children. Piece by piece, Sean Lannon laid out his crimes in shocking detail, revealing not only the how, but the why. "It began," he said, with Jennifer Lannon, his ex-wife, the mother of his children. He claimed she had become deeply entangled in drugs, surrounded by people he believed were dangerous and morally corrupt. According to Sean, Jennifer's influence was poisoning their children. His solution: elimination. In his own words, he shot her in the back cold and calculated, then dismembered her body to prevent discovery. There was no remorse in his voice, only justification. But Jennifer was only the beginning. Next was Justin Ma. Sean admitted to luring Justin to the house by pretending to be Jennifer, using her phone to send messages. He claimed he had seen disturbing photos involving his son on Justin's device, photos he never produced, but ones he insisted justified the killing. When Justin arrived at the house, Sean ambushed him and ended his life with a single bullet. Then came Matthew Miller. Matthew, Sean said, had come over alone. There was no elaborate setup, no bait, just another perceived threat to his children's well-being. Another reason to kill. Again, he used a firearm. Again, there was no hesitation. He shot Matthew in the head and disposed of the body alongside the others. Randall Apostolon was the man helping Sean transport the bins containing the dismembered bodies. But when Randall asked for more money to keep quiet, something in Sean snapped. There were no warnings. No gun this time. Sean picked up a hammer and struck Randall repeatedly, killing him in the driver's seat of the red Ford Ranger. And then he loaded Randall's body into the very truck he had died in. The confessions were horrific, but Sean wasn't done. He admitted to one more murder. In New Jersey, before fleeing west, Sean had killed a man named Michael Dukowski, a former acquaintance. Sean claimed Michael had abused him as a child and possessed incriminating photos. Whether those claims were true or not, the act was the same, premeditated and violent. He had bludgeoned Michael to death, then fled the state. Throughout the interrogation, Sean spoke without emotion. No tears, no regret, only a disturbing sense of control, as though recounting a list of tasks he had completed rather than lives he had destroyed. He spoke of severed limbs, hidden weapons, and silent children left in the wake of his calculated rage. Detectives listened, horrified but focused. Every detail Sean provided aligned with the timeline, the bodies, the tools, the motive he had constructed in his mind. His crimes weren't chaotic outbursts. They were methodical, rooted in a twisted logic that blurred justice and vengeance. And that left detectives with a terrible possibility: either there were indeed 11 more victims hidden beneath lava flows in time, or Sean was lying. Perhaps it was an attempt to manipulate the court, to seem more dangerous, to appear more disturbed, to delay justice, or to build a twisted legend of himself as a dark crusader. Whatever the motive, his words couldn't be ignored. Maybe he was telling the truth. Maybe the bodies are still out there, swallowed by the black rock of Malpais. Or maybe the most dangerous part of Sean Lannon was not what he did, but what he wanted the world to believe. Justice for the victims of Sean Lannon's terrifying spree came not with a dramatic trial, but with a quiet, calculated confession in the courtroom. For that killing, the court sentenced him to 35 years behind bars. It was the first official chapter of legal accountability in a case that had haunted 2 states. But the reckoning wasn't over. In May 2024, Lannon returned to face the darkness he had unleashed in New Mexico. There he confessed to the grisly murders of Jennifer Lannon, Justin Matthew Miller, and Randall Apostolon, 4 people whose lives were extinguished and discarded like shadows. 4 victims, each killed in a different burst of cruelty. 4 bodies stuffed into bins abandoned in a truck like forgotten waste. And for each of them, the court delivered a sentence 15 years. 1 for Jennifer, 1 for Justin, 1 for Matthew, 1 for Randall. The sentences were ordered to be served consecutively. No stacking, no shortcuts. A total of 60 additional years tacked onto his time, a punishment meant to reflect the weight of stolen life. This wasn't just a criminal investigation. It was a war against time manipulation and the horrors one man tried to hide. And though the story ends in a courtroom, the echoes of what happened continue to haunt everyone it touched. The Sean Lannon case is a chilling story of a serial killer driven by complex motives, from personal grudges to drug-related issues. The success of the investigation relied on Detective Turney's persistent surveillance footage and ultimately Sean's own confession. Although his claims about 11 additional victims remain unverified, the confirmed cases reveal the brutality and calculated nature of his actions. This case is not just a true crime story, but also a stark warning about the devastating consequences of violence, substance abuse, and loss of control in personal relationships.